His fingers traced the curve of her jaw, tilting her face upward until she had no choice but to meet his gaze. Those dark eyes, cold enough to freeze empires, hot enough to burn through every wall she'd ever built. "Say it again," Park Ji-hoon commanded, his voice low, dangerous, wrapped in silk and steel. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. Her back pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, Seoul's glittering skyline sprawling 50 stories below them. His body caged hers. Not touching. Not yet. But close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell the intoxicating blend of sandalwood and power that clung to skin. "I'm not saying it again," she whispered, defiance threading through her voice even as her heart hammered against her ribs. His lips curved. Not quite a smile. Something more predatory. "You begged me once, Amelia. You grabbed my face in front of 200 people and begged me to kiss you." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and she felt that single touch everywhere. "Don't pretend you've forgotten. That was survival." Was it? He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Then why are you still here? Why do you look at me like you're waiting for me to do it again?" She should push him away. She should run. That's what smart women did when they found themselves trapped in the lair of Seoul's most dangerous man. But Amelia had stopped being smart 3 weeks ago, the night she'd kissed a stranger and accidentally sold her soul. Before you continue watching, if you're new here and you love stories filled with drama, passion, revenge, and love that burns, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. 3 weeks earlier, the rain hadn't stopped for 2 days. It fell in sheets over Seoul, turning the streets into rivers and the sky into a gray ceiling that pressed down on everything beneath it. Amelia Carter stood in the bathroom of a restaurant she couldn't afford, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her braids were pulled back in an elegant updo, the kind she used to wear when she believed beautiful things could happen to her. Her dress, a deep burgundy that hugged every curve of her plus-size frame, had been purchased with the last of her savings. This was supposed to be a celebration. Her first photography exhibition in Seoul. 3 years of building a career, of escaping Atlanta and the ghost of a marriage that had nearly killed her. 3 years of healing. And then Peter had walked into the gallery. Her hands were still shaking. She gripped the edge of the sink, watching the tremor move through her fingers like an earthquake. She couldn't stop. He'd found her. Somehow, across oceans and continents, through name changes and deleted social media accounts, and a restraining order that meant nothing outside American borders, Peter had found her. "You think you can leave me?" His words echoed in her head, the way he'd cornered her near the back exit of the gallery, his smile casual for anyone watching while his hand had closed around her wrist tight enough to bruise. "You think you can just disappear?" She'd told him she would scream. He'd laughed. Said no one in Seoul would care about some Black American woman making a scene. Said he'd kill her before anyone could help. The worst part? She'd believed him. The bathroom door opened, and Amelia's heart stopped. But it was just a woman, Korean, elegant, wearing diamonds that could have paid Amelia's rent for a decade. The woman barely glanced at her before disappearing into a stall. Amelia released a breath. She needed to move. Needed to think. The back exit wasn't safe. Peter was waiting there. The front exit meant walking through the entire restaurant, past whoever Peter had brought with him. She had no one to call. No friends close enough in Seoul. No family who could reach her in time. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I can see you. Stop hiding in the bathroom like a scared little girl and face me. You have 2 minutes before I come in there and drag you out." Amelia's blood turned to ice. She moved. Not thinking, just surviving. Out the bathroom door, through a side hallway she hadn't noticed before. The restaurant was massive, one of those high-end establishments where the wealthy came to be seen. She passed private dining rooms with frosted glass, heard laughter and clinking glasses, The sounds of people living lives where ex-husbands didn't hunt them across continents. A door at the end of the hall. Amelia pushed through it and stepped into another world. The private room was enormous. A single long table dominated the space, surrounded by men in suits so expensive they probably cost more than her car. The air was thick with tension, with something dangerous and electric that made the hair on Amelia's arms stand up. Every head turned toward her. She froze. 20 pairs of eyes locked onto her, the black woman in the burgundy dress who had just crashed whatever meeting this was. "I'm so sorry," she breathed, already backing toward the door. "Wrong room, Amelia." Peter's voice, coming from the hallway behind her. Panic exploded through her system. She looked at the men, at the door behind her, at the narrowing options of her rapidly deteriorating situation. One man sat at the head of the table. He hadn't moved when she'd entered, hadn't flinched when the others had reached for their waistbands. He simply watched her with eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light, his face beautiful in a way that was almost cruel. He was the most dangerous person in this room. Amelia knew it the way animals knew predators. And somehow, impossibly, he was her only option. Peter was getting closer. She could hear his footsteps, his voice calling her name like she was a dog who'd slipped her leash. Amelia made a decision that would change her life forever. She walked straight toward the man at the head of the table. His men moved to intercept her, but he raised one hand, just one, and they froze like he controlled them with strings. She reached him, looked down into that devastating face, saw the curiosity there, the cold amusement. "Please," she whispered, and she hated how her voice broke on the word. "He's going to kill me. I don't know who you are or what this is, but he's going to kill me the moment he gets me alone." The man tilted his head slightly. "And what would you like me to do about that?" The door burst open. Peter stood there, flanked by two men who looked like the kind of muscle you hired when you wanted problems to disappear. "There you are," Peter said, his voice pleasant, his eyes murderous. "I'm sorry to interrupt your meeting, gentlemen. My wife has a tendency to wander." "Ex-wife," Amelia said, but her voice was barely audible. Peter stepped forward. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." She felt him reaching for her, felt the familiar terror closing around her throat. In that moment, she thought of every time he'd hit her, every time he'd apologized and promised it would never happen again. Every night she'd spent planning her escape, wondering if she'd live long enough to use her plane ticket. And something in her snapped. She grabbed the stranger's face with both hands and kissed him. The room went silent. Everything went silent, except for the thundering of her heart and the soft, startled sound the man made against her lips. She'd meant it to be quick. A desperate ploy for protection, nothing more. But his hand came up to grip the back of her neck, and suddenly he was kissing her back. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't kind. It was possession, brutal, consuming, claiming. His other arm wrapped around her waist and pulled her down onto his lap, and when she gasped, he took the opportunity to deepen the kiss, to make it something that would leave marks on her soul. When he finally released her mouth, she was trembling. His lips brushed against her ear. "Play along," he murmured, so soft that only she could hear, "and I'll make sure he never touches you again." Then he looked up at Peter with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice carrying through the room like a declaration of war. "This woman isn't your wife. She's mine." Peter's face went pale, then red, then something beyond color into pure rage. "Who the hell do you think you are?" One of the men at the table laughed. Actually laughed. "You really don't know?" Peter's muscles shifted nervously. One of them leaned in and whispered something. Amelia watched Peter's expression change, watched the rage curdle into something like fear. "You're Park Ji-hoon," Peter said slowly. The man beneath Amelia, Ji-hoon, smiled. "And you've just walked into my restaurant, interrupted my meeting, and tried to claim my woman belongs to you." He stroked Amelia's back, casual, proprietary. "I'm curious how you'd like to proceed." Peter opened his mouth, closed it. His hands were shaking now, and Amelia felt a savage satisfaction at seeing her tormentor suddenly on the other end of fear. "There's been a misunderstanding," Peter said, the words coming out stilted, careful. "I apologize for the interruption." Apology not accepted. Ji-hoon's voice had gone cold. "Kong. Show our guest and his friends the exit. Make sure they understand they're never to come within 100 meters of my woman again." The man who had laughed stood up. He was massive, easily 6'4", with shoulders like a linebacker. "And if they don't understand? Help them understand." Peter was dragged out. His hard muscle didn't even try to fight. And through all of it, Amelia sat frozen on the lap of a man she'd just kissed without permission, a man who had claimed her as his property in front of a room full of criminals. When the door closed and silence fell, Ji-hoon's grip on her waist loosened. "You can breathe now." She realized she'd been holding her breath. She exhaled shakily and tried to stand, but his hand stayed firmly at her hip. "Not yet," he said. "We need to have a conversation." "About what?" He looked at her with those dark eyes, and she felt something shift in the air between them. "About the fact that you just kissed me in front of my entire leadership team. About the fact that there are cameras in this room, which means our little performance will be on every gossip site in Seoul by morning." His thumb traced a slow circle on her hip. "About the fact that if I don't follow through on what I just claimed, I'll look weak. And I don't look weak, Amelia." Her stomach dropped. "How do you know my name?" "Your ex said it when he was calling for you like a lost dog." His jaw tightened slightly. "I don't like men who hurt women. I especially don't like men who think money and muscle give them the right to break beautiful things." Beautiful things. She shouldn't have felt anything at those words. Not from a man who was clearly more dangerous than Peter could ever dream of being. "I'm sorry," she said. "I panicked. I didn't mean to get you involved in my problems, and I definitely didn't mean to." She gestured vaguely at their current position, at her body still pressed against his. "Kiss me like your life depended on it?" He almost smiled. "Almost. Your life did depend on it. So I suppose I can understand the impulse." She needed to get off his lap. She needed to leave this room and figure out how to disappear again, how to run from Peter and now from whatever mess she'd created with this stranger. "Let me go," she said. "Please. I'll figure out my own problems." "You don't need to. Here's what's going to happen." His voice cut through her protests like a blade. "By morning, every gossip outlet in Korea will be running stories about Park Ji-hoon's mysterious new woman. Your ex will see them. His people will see them. And they'll know that touching you means going to war with me." Amelia stared at him. "You don't even know me. I know that you were brave enough to walk into a room full of dangerous men and beg the most dangerous one for help. I know that you kissed me like you were drowning and I was oxygen. And I know that I haven't been this interested in anything in years." His fingers traced up her spine, and she shivered despite herself. "Stay with me," he said, and it wasn't quite a request. "Let me protect you. Let the world believe what we've already shown them. And what do you get out of it?" His smile was slow, dangerous, devastating. "I get you, Amelia. In my home, in my life, in my debt." He leaned closer, his lips brushing against her cheek. "I get to find out if that kiss was desperation or if there's something more burning underneath all that fear." She should have said no. Every survival instinct she had was screaming at her to run. But she thought about Peter, about running again, about spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. And she thought about the way Ji-hoon had kissed her back. Like she was worth protecting. Like she mattered. "Okay," she whispered. His eyes darkened with something that made her pulse race. "Okay, I'll stay. I'll play along. But I have conditions." "Name them." "Separate bedrooms. This is an arrangement, not a relationship. And when Peter gives up and leaves me alone, you let me go." He considered her for a long moment. Then he stood, lifting her with him like she weighed nothing, setting her on her feet with a gentleness that seemed at odds with everything else about him. "Separate bedrooms," he agreed. "For now. The rest." He stepped back, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. We'll see. He extended his hand. Welcome to my world, Amelia Carter. Try not to burn it down. She took his hand. No promises. That night, she moved into the penthouse. The elevator required a special code, 17 floors above the rest of the building, accessible only to Ji-hoon and whoever he approved. The doors opened onto a space that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that cost more than her entire life's earnings. And everywhere, evidence of danger. Security cameras. Armed guards in the hallway. A quiet that felt heavy, watchful. Your room is down the hall, Ji-hoon said, leading her through the penthouse. There's clothing in the closet in your size. My assistant is efficient. The kitchen is stocked. You're free to move around the penthouse, but don't leave the building without security. Am I a guest or a prisoner? He stopped walking, turned to face her. You're whatever you want to be, Amelia. But you should understand something. He stepped closer, and she forced herself not to retreat. The world now believes you belong to me. That comes with protection, yes. But it also comes with expectations. There will be events, public appearances, moments where we need to be convincing. You mean more kissing? His gaze dropped to her mouth. Among other things, heat flooded her cheeks. This is insane. I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about your world. Then let me teach you. He reached out and tucked a stray braid behind her ear, and the gentleness of the gesture nearly undid her. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we have work to do. He walked away, disappearing into another part of the penthouse. Amelia stood in the hallway, surrounded by luxury and danger, wondering what kind of deal she'd just made with the devil. If you're enjoying this story, drop a comment below telling me what you think of Ji-hoon. Is he the villain, the hero, or something more complicated? And don't forget to like this video. It helps more people discover these stories. Now, let's continue. The first week was an education. Amelia learned that Park Ji-hoon ran an empire that stretched across legal and illegal territories. Real estate development that cleaned money from gambling operations. Nightclubs that served as fronts for information gathering. A shipping company that moved things customs agents preferred not to see. She learned that he was feared, genuinely, deeply feared, by everyone from street-level criminals to corporate executives. That his name was spoken in whispers. That the men who worked for him would die before betraying him. She learned that he never raised his voice. Never had to. That his anger was cold rather than hot, and it was the cold that made him terrifying. And she learned that he watched her. Constantly. With an intensity that made her skin prickle and her stomach flip in ways she refused to examine. They ate breakfast together every morning. Ji-hoon insisted on it. It's about routine, he explained on the third day, pouring her tea with hands that had probably killed people. Building intimacy. When we appear in public, we need to look like we've shared 1,000 mornings, not like strangers playing pretend. Is that why you keep asking about my childhood? I ask because I'm interested. He set down the teapot. You grew up in Atlanta. Your mother was a nurse. Your father left when you were 7. You put yourself through art school. You married Peter when you were 23 because he made you feel safe. His jaw tightened. How long did it take for him to stop pretending? Amelia's hands wrapped around her teacup. 6 months. The first time was small. He grabbed my arm too hard during an argument. He apologized. Said it would never happen again. But it did. It always does. She stared into her tea. It got worse gradually. By the time I realized how bad it was, I felt trapped. He controlled the money. The house was in his name. My friends had slowly disappeared. He'd driven them away without me noticing. And I was so ashamed. Of what? Of being the kind of woman who stayed. I'd always sworn I would never be that woman, you know? I watched my mother stay with my father while he made her small and sad, and I promised myself I'd be different. She laughed bitterly. Turns out it's not that simple. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. How did you get out? He put me in the hospital. Told the doctors I fell down the stairs. But the nurse, She saw the bruises on my wrists. The old scars. She gave me information about shelters, resources. She helped me understand that I could leave. And the restraining order? It was supposed to protect me. But Peter has money. Connections. When I left Atlanta, I knew he would come looking eventually. I just hoped I'd have more time. Ji-hoon reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not confining. He will never touch you again. I swear it on my life. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. By the end of the first week, the gossip sites had exploded. Park Jae-hoon's mystery woman, who is the curvy American beauty. Mafia boss goes public with shocking romance. The kiss that stopped Seoul. Inside Ji-hoon's secret love affair. The photos from the restaurant were everywhere. Amelia saw herself in them, saw the desperation in her eyes transform into something else the moment Ji-hoon kissed her back. They looked like lovers. They looked like they were burning for each other. And somewhere across the city, Peter was seeing them too. The threat started on day 8. Flowers delivered to the penthouse lobby. A card attached. Did you think changing men would save you? I found you once. I'll find you again. Ji-hoon read the card with an expression that made the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. He's testing boundaries. Seeing how close he can get. What do? We send a message back. Ji-hoon pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly. Get dressed. Something stunning. We're going out. The nightclub was called Obsidian. It occupied the top 3 floors of a building in Gangnam, accessible only by private elevator. When Amelia stepped inside, wearing a black dress that made her feel powerful and exposed in equal measure, she understood immediately that this was Ji-hoon's territory. The energy changed when he walked in. Conversations paused. Heads turned. People watched with fear and fascination as the most dangerous man in Seoul moved through the crowd with his hand on the small of her back. VIP section. Champagne that cost more than her monthly grocery budget. And everywhere, cameras. Phones raised. People pretending not to stare while recording everything. Smile, Ji-hoon murmured against her ear. Look at me like you can't imagine being anywhere else. She turned to face him. He was so close enough that she could count his eyelashes, could see the faint scar near his left eyebrow, could feel his breath on her skin. Is this part of the message? She asked. This is all of the message. His hand came up to cup her face, and she leaned into his touch without meaning to. Every video taken tonight will reach Peter within hours. Every image will show him exactly what he's lost. And when he sees this, he kissed her. It was different from the first time. The first time had been desperate, survival-driven, chaotic. This was deliberate, controlled. He kissed her like he was making art, like every movement of his lips was calculated to destroy her completely. And God help her, she kissed him back. Her fingers curled into the lapels of his jacket. She pulled him closer without thinking, and she felt his smile against her mouth. The kiss deepened, became something that felt less like performance and more like confession. When he pulled away, she was breathing hard. So was he. That wasn't fake, she whispered. No. His thumb traced her cheekbone. It wasn't. Across the club, someone was definitely filming. Amelia couldn't bring herself to care. The second week brought escalation. Peter tried to have Ji-hoon killed. It was sloppy, amateur assassins hired through a chain of intermediaries, men who didn't know who they were targeting until it was too late. They were intercepted before they reached the penthouse. Ji-hoon didn't tell her what happened to them. She didn't ask. But she saw the change in him afterward. A hardness that hadn't been there before, an edge that made his men move more carefully around him. He was planning something. She could see it in the way he took meetings late into the night, in the quiet conversations that stopped when she entered the room. What are you going to do? She asked him one night. They were standing on the balcony of the penthouse, the city sprawling beneath them like a galaxy of lights. About Peter. What would you like me to do? I don't know. I've spent so long just trying to survive him that I never thought about. She trailed off. Ending him? I don't want you to kill him. She turned to face Ji-hoon. I don't want that on my conscience. Or yours. You think I have a conscience? I think you pretend not to. But I've seen how you treat your people. How you protected me when you didn't have to. You're not a monster, Ji-hoon. No matter how hard you try to convince the world otherwise. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. I won't kill him, he said finally. But I will destroy everything he has. His money, his reputation, his power. By the time I'm done, Peter Carter will have nothing left but the knowledge of what he lost when he tried to break you. And then you'll be free. His voice was rough. To leave. To stay. Whatever you want. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt something like loss. What if I don't want to leave? The words hung between them. Ji-hoon's expression shifted surprise, followed by something heated and hungry that made her breath catch. Then you stay, he said. Not as an arrangement. Not as a performance. He cupped her face in both hands. As mine. Really mine. I barely know you. You know me better than anyone has in years. He pressed his forehead to hers. You know that I'm selfish and possessive and probably incapable of loving anyone the right way. But you also know that I would burn this city to the ground before I let anyone hurt you. Is that not enough? She should have said no. Should have reminded herself that this was temporary, that she'd promised herself she would never belong to another man again. But looking into his eyes, those dark, desperate, dangerous eyes, she couldn't find the lie. It's enough, she whispered. He kissed her like a man starving. Like she was water in a desert, like she was the first beautiful thing he'd ever seen. His hands tangled in her braids, pulled her closer until there was no space between them, until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. When they finally broke apart, gasping, he swept her into his arms and carried her inside. Last chance, he said, pausing at the door to his bedroom. Tell me to stop and I'll stop. Don't stop. She pulled his face down to hers. Don't ever stop. The night shattered around them. By morning, everything had changed. Amelia woke in sheets that smelled like sandalwood and sex, her body pleasantly sore, her heart dangerously full. Ji-hoon was already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Good morning, he said, his voice sleep-rough. Morning. She stretched, winced slightly at the pull of muscles she'd forgotten she had. What time is it? Early. But we need to talk about something. Her stomach clenched. Here it was the morning after regret, the careful distance that men learn to deploy when things went too far. But Ji-hoon didn't pull away. Instead, he pulled her closer, tucking her against his chest like she fit there naturally. My men intercepted a message last night, he said. Peter is planning something bigger. He's been reaching out to my enemies, trying to build alliances against me. He's that desperate? You underestimate how much he hates losing what he considers his. Ji-hoon's arm tightened around her. I'm accelerating my plans. Within 48 hours, Peter Carter will be destroyed financially and legally. I have evidence of crimes he committed in the United States, enough to have him extradited and imprisoned for decades. Evidence? How did you? I have resources. And I've been using them to take apart every piece of his life since the night he walked into my restaurant. Ji-hoon pressed a kiss to the top of her head. But there's a complication. What kind of complication? To deliver the evidence, I need to work with American federal agents. Which means stepping into a spotlight I've spent years avoiding. It could expose parts of my organization. Endanger my people. Amelia sat up, the sheets pooling around her waist. You can't do that. You can't risk everything just to protect you. He sat up too, facing her. I've been running an empire for 15 years, Amelia. Building power, accumulating enemies, making myself untouchable. And in all that time, I never once found something worth risking it for. He took her hand. Until you. Ji-hoon. Let me finish. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. I've already made arrangements. Key parts of my operations will be transferred to trusted lieutenants. Whatever exposure happens, my people will be protected. The only one at risk is me. I can't let you. You can't stop me. His smile was sad, beautiful, resolved. This is my choice. My risk. And I'm making it because for the first time in my life, I want a future more than I want power. Tears pricked at her eyes. What if something goes wrong? Then you'll be free regardless. Peter will be in prison. My people will ensure you're protected. And you can build the life you always deserved. I don't want that life. Not without you in it. He pulled her into his arms. Then we fight. Together. And we win. Now, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs a love story that proves the right person will fight for you even when the world says they shouldn't. Comment ride or die if you're Team Ji-hoon, or run, girl, if you think Amelia should escape while she can. Now, let's get back to the story. The next 48 hours were chaos. Ji-hoon's plan unfolded with military precision. Teams of lawyers filed simultaneous lawsuits against Peter's companies in 3 countries. Evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion was delivered to the FBI, the IRS, and the Korean National Police Agency. News outlets received anonymous tips about Peter Carter's history of domestic violence, complete with hospital records, police reports, and testimony from other women he'd hurt. The exposure was total. Complete. Devastating. By the second day, Peter's accounts were frozen. His business partners were fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. His face was all over the news, not as a powerful businessman, but as an alleged criminal and abuser. Amelia watched the coverage from the penthouse, Ji-hoon beside her. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know." She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to identify the strange sensation there. Relieved. Vindicated. And also sad. Sad that it took all of this. That I had to run to another country and accidentally kiss a mafia boss just to be believed. That there are probably hundreds of women still trapped with men like Peter who don't have Park Ji-hoon in their corner. He pulled her close. One battle at a time. We won this one. They won. For a few hours, it felt like the war was over. And then Peter played his final card. The fire started at midnight. Amelia woke to alarms and the smell of smoke and Ji-hoon already on his feet, issuing rapid commands into his phone. Armed men flooded the penthouse. Someone wrapped her in a robe and shoved shoes onto her feet. "What's happening?" she demanded. "The building's been compromised." Kong appeared at her side, his face grim. "We're evacuating you." "Where's Ji-hoon?" "Handling it. He told me to get you out." "Now move." She was rushed into a private elevator, down 17 floors to an underground garage where armored vehicles waited. Everything happened so fast, men with guns, headlights, the screech of tires on concrete. And then they stopped. Peter stood in the middle of the exit, flanked by men with weapons, a detonator in his hand. "Did you really think I'd let you walk away?" he called out, his voice echoing through the garage. "Did you think any of this would actually end?" King's hand pressed Amelia back into the car. "Stay down." But she couldn't. She couldn't cower anymore. Couldn't hide while men fought over her like she was property. She opened the car door and stepped out. Kong grabbed for her, but she was already walking forward. Peter's eyes locked onto her. For a moment, she saw it all, the charm that had drawn her in, the rage that had broken her, the obsession that had followed her across the world. "You did all of this," she said, and her voice was steady. She was proud of that. "You spent years hurting me, controlling me, making me small. And when I finally escaped, you couldn't stand it. You couldn't accept that I was strong enough to leave. You're not strong." Peter's finger hovered over the detonator. "You traded one cage for another. Different man, same leash." "No." She stepped closer. "Ji-hoon never put a leash on me. He gave me a choice. Every step of the way, he gave me a choice. That's the difference between love and ownership, Peter. That's what you never understood." "Love?" Peter laughed. "You think that monster loves you? He's using you. Same as he uses everyone. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't." Amelia shrugged. But at least with him, I get to decide. I get to stay or go. I get to fight or run. He respects me enough to let me choose my own life. You don't get to choose. Peter's voice cracked. You're mine. You've always been mine. And if I can't have you. The shot came from above. Peter crumpled, the detonator clattering to the ground. His men scattered as Ji-hoon's snipers opened fire from the building's upper floors. In seconds, it was over. Ji-hoon appeared from the stairwell, walking toward her with smoke still rising from his pistol. His face was bloody. Someone had gotten in a lucky hit, but his eyes were focused only on her. Are you insane? He demanded, grabbing her arms. You could have been killed. You walked toward a man with a bomb. I had to. She grabbed him right back. I had to face him. I had to stop being afraid. Amelia, I love you. The words burst out before she could stop them. I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other weeks. But I love you, Park Ji-hoon. I love that you're dangerous and damaged and that you saved me even when you didn't have to. I love that you're willing to burn the world for me. And I love that you respect me enough to let me burn it myself when I need to. He stared at her. For one terrible moment, she thought he might walk away. Then he kissed her like the garage wasn't full of bodies, like his men weren't watching, like the building above them wasn't still smoking. He kissed her like she was his whole world. I love you too, he said against her mouth. I have since the moment you grabbed my face and demanded that I save you. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. Behind them, Kang cleared his throat. Sir, we should really move. The police are on their way. Ji-hoon laughed, actually laughed, a sound Amelia had never heard from him before. Always so practical, Kang. He took Amelia's hand. Come on, let's go home. The penthouse is on fire. Then we'll find a new home. He squeezed her fingers. Somewhere without bullet holes in the walls. Somewhere we can start fresh. They walked out of the garage together, leaving the smoke and blood behind them. The night air was cool on her skin, clean after the chaos of the last hour. What happens now? Amelia asked. Now, Ji-hoon opened the door of a waiting car, gestured for her to get in. Now we deal with police questions. File paperwork. Probably spend the next few months untangling the legal mess your ex left behind. That sounds exhausting. It will be. He slid in beside her. But after that, I was thinking we could take a trip. Somewhere warm. Somewhere without any mafia politics or ex-husbands. Is Park Ji-hoon capable of a real vacation? For you. He leaned over, pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'm willing to try. The car pulled away from the building. In the rearview mirror, Amelia could see the penthouse, their penthouse, with smoke still pouring from the upper floors. Everything she'd brought with her to Seoul was probably destroyed. The remnants of her old life, the photography equipment, the careful normalcy she'd tried to build. But beside her sat a man who had killed for her, who had risked everything for her, who looked at her like she was worth more than empires. Hey, she said. Thank you. For saving me. For choosing me. For. She gestured vaguely at everything. Ji-hoon's hand found hers in the darkness of the car. You saved yourself, Amelia. You just needed someone to hold the door open. 6 months later, the gallery was packed. Amelia's second exhibition in Seoul had drawn 3 times the crowd of her first. Her photographs lined the walls, images of strength and vulnerability, of love and danger, of a woman finding herself in the most unexpected places. The centerpiece was a portrait of Ji-hoon. She'd taken it early one morning, before he'd woken up completely. His face soft with sleep, the morning light turning his skin golden. He'd protested when she'd shown it to him, said it revealed too much, made him look human. That was exactly why she loved it. You've made me a spectacle, he murmured now, coming up behind her. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. You make yourself a spectacle. I just documented it. He hummed against her ear. I've been thinking. Dangerous pastime. I want to make this official. The pretending to be together. The arrangement. His hand moved to her hip, steadying her. I want it to be real. Permanently. She turned in his arms, looked up at his face, that beautiful, dangerous face she'd grown to love more than anything. Are you asking me to marry you in the middle of my gallery opening? Would you prefer a more dramatic setting? I could arrange explosions. A car chase. Perhaps another kiss in front of cameras. She laughed. I think I've had enough drama to last a lifetime. Then say yes. He pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple band with a single diamond, elegant and understated. Say yes, and I promise to spend the rest of my life giving you exactly the amount of drama you want. No more. No less. The crowd around them had gone quiet. Amelia could see phones raised, could hear whispers spreading through the gallery. Another moment that would end up on gossip sites. Another headline. But she didn't care. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't performing survival. She wasn't pretending. She was simply standing in her own truth with a man who loved her for exactly who she was. Yes, she said. Obviously, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, kissed her until the gallery erupted in applause. And when they finally came up for air, grinning like idiots, she realized something. She had walked into a room of dangerous men and demanded to be saved. But what she'd actually found was something better. She'd found the courage to save herself. And she'd found someone worth building a new life with. The kiss that had started as desperation had become her destiny. And she wouldn't have had it any other way. Thank you so much for watching until the end of the story. If Amelia and Jihoon's journey made you feel something, hope, excitement, butterflies, drop an emoji in the comments to let me know. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. And share this video with someone who loves love stories with a little danger, a lot of drama, and happily ever afters that are actually earned. I'll see you in the next one. Stay beautiful. Stay dangerous. And always choose the person who would burn the world just to see you smile.